The stadium lights had already dimmed when security guard Marcus Chin noticed something strange. A thin figure in a worn baseball cap and oversized jacket was kneeling beside a homeless man near Gate 7 of Madison Square Garden, and the 20,000 fans streaming past them had no idea they were walking within 3 feet of the most famous person on the planet. What happened in the next 47 minutes would create a moment so powerful that it would still be changing lives 3 decades later. But before I tell you what happened next, if this story is already touching you, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next will change how you see the world forever. Let me take you back to how this impossible moment began. It was November 15th, 1988. Michael Jackson was scheduled to perform the final show of his Bad World Tour at Madison Square Garden. Outside, in the bitter New York cold, a man named Robert Sullivan sat against the concrete wall with a battered saxophone case beside him. Robert was 53 years old. He had been a session musician in the 1970s, playing backup for Motown artists before addiction cost him everything. His wife had left. His daughter hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. The only thing he hadn't pawned was his father's 1952 Selmer saxophone, held together with duct tape and prayers. Robert's fingers were bleeding. He'd been playing for 6 hours straight, trying to earn enough for a meal and maybe a night in a shelter. The November wind cut through his thin coat, but he kept playing. He was performing Human Nature, one of Michael's songs, because it was the only thing that made him feel human anymore. Michael Jackson had arrived at the venue 3 hours early, disguised as he often was when he wanted to move through the world unseen. Fame had stolen authentic connection from him, turned every interaction into performance. Tonight, he told the security team he needed 30 minutes alone before soundcheck. He needed to remember what it felt like to be invisible, to be just another person in the crowd. That's when he heard it. The saxophone notes were imperfect, broken by the cold and the musician's exhaustion, but there was something in the phrasing that made Michael stop breathing. Whoever was playing understood the soul of the song in a way that couldn't be taught. Michael moved closer, staying in the shadows, watching as hundreds of his fans walked past this man without seeing him. The irony wasn't lost on Michael. Here were thousands of people desperate to see him, willing to pay hundreds of dollars for a glimpse, and they were stepping over a man who was pouring his heart into Michael's own music. They couldn't see the genius bleeding on the sidewalk 3 feet away. Michael approached slowly. Robert's eyes were closed as he played, lost in the music. Up close, Michael could see the duct tape holding the saxophone together, the blood on the keys from Robert's cracked fingers, the trembling from cold and hunger. And that's when everything changed. Michael knelt down beside Robert, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He didn't say anything at first, just listened. When Robert finished the song and opened his eyes, he nearly dropped his saxophone. Even with the disguise, even with the cap pulled low, Robert knew those eyes. "Keep playing," Michael said softly. "Please. You understand that song better than I do." Robert's hands were shaking. I can't be seeing this. I'm losing my mind." "You're not," Michael said. "Your fingers are bleeding. How long have you been out here?" 6 hours. Maybe 7. Robert's voice cracked. "I used to play sessions. Motown. Back when music meant something. Back when I meant something." Michael was quiet for a moment, watching the crowd stream past them, invisible to everyone. "You still mean something," he said. "Your music just proved that. What's your name?" "Robert Sullivan." "Robert, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Can you still play? Really play? Not just survive, but create?" Robert looked at his bleeding fingers, at the duct-taped saxophone, at the man who'd somehow seen him when thousands hadn't. "I don't know anymore. It's been so long since anyone listened." But what nobody in that stadium knew was that Michael had just made a decision that would break every protocol, shock his management team, and create one of the most powerful moments in concert history. "Come with me," Michael said, standing and extending his hand. Robert didn't move. "Where?" "Inside. I have a show in 2 hours, and I need a saxophone player." "You're joking. I'm hallucinating. Hypothermia does that." Michael pulled off his cap, revealing himself fully for the first time. Around them, a few people started to notice, whispers spreading like wildfire. I'm not joking, and we need to move fast before this turns into chaos. Do you trust me? Robert took Michael's hand. What happened next shocked even Michael's closest team members. Michael led Robert through a service entrance, past stunned security guards who were frantically radioing ahead. Marcus Chun, the security guard who'd first noticed them, followed at a distance, unable to believe what he was witnessing. In the backstage area, Michael's tour manager, Frank Dillio, intercepted them. "Michael, what are you doing? Sound check is in 20 minutes. And who is this?" "This is Robert Sullivan," Michael said calmly. "He's playing saxophone tonight during Human Nature. Get him cleaned up, get him warm, and find him something to wear." "Michael, we can't just—" "Frank." Michael's voice was gentle but firm. "I was invisible once too. I know what it feels like when the world looks through you instead of at you. Tonight, 20,000 people are going to see Robert. Really see him. And this is just the beginning of what Michael did. If you're feeling this story, share it with one person who needs to remember that miracles still happen. The next part will absolutely break your heart." The next 90 minutes were a blur for Robert. A medic cleaned and bandaged his fingers. Someone brought him hot food, the first real meal he'd had in 3 days. A wardrobe assistant found him clean clothes that actually fit. But the most surreal moment came when Michael sat beside him in the dressing room, saxophone in hand. "Tell me about this," Michael said, examining the duct-taped instrument. "It was my father's. He played with Dizzy Gillespie once, back in '52. It's the only thing I never sold. Couldn't. It would have been like selling my soul." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "I've been trying to hold on to it, hold on to him, hold on to the person I used to be." Michael was quiet, turning the saxophone over in his hands, seeing the care beneath the desperation. "Your father would be proud of you. How can you say that? Look at me. I'm homeless. I'm a failure. You're still playing," Michael said. "After everything you've lost, you're still creating beauty. That's not failure, Robert. That's heroism." At 8:47 p.m., the lights in Madison Square Garden went dark. 20,000 fans screamed as Michael took the stage. For the first hour, the show followed its usual pattern. The precision choreography, the iconic moves, the songs that had defined a generation. But then, as the opening notes of Human Nature began, Michael did something he'd never done before. He stopped the music. "Tonight," Michael said, his voice echoing through the arena, "I want to tell you about someone I met. His name is Robert Sullivan, and 3 hours ago, he was outside this building playing my music on a street corner. Most of you walked right past him. I almost did too." The crowd grew silent, confused. What was happening? But I stopped, and I listened, and I heard something that reminded me why I make music in the first place. Robert's been through things I can't imagine. He's lost almost everything, but he hasn't lost his gift. Tonight, I want you to really see him. Robert, come out here." From the wings, Robert emerged, still not quite believing this was real. He was wearing clean clothes, his saxophone gleaming under the stage lights. Michael's team had spent the last hour carefully repairing and polishing it. The crowd erupted, not because they knew who Robert was, but because they could feel the weight of the moment. Michael walked over to Robert and put his hand on his shoulder. "Play with me," he said quietly. "Show them what I heard." What happened in the next 6 minutes became legendary. Robert's saxophone wove through Human Nature with a rawness and authenticity that transformed the song. His fingers, bandaged and still healing, moved across the keys with muscle memory that addiction and homelessness hadn't erased. The crowd of 20,000 fell completely silent, then began to weep. Michael sang, but this wasn't a performance anymore. It was a conversation between two musicians, between two humans who understood what it meant to be seen and unseen, to be elevated and forgotten. When the song ended, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds before the arena exploded. 20,000 people rose to their feet. Robert stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, as Michael removed his iconic sequin glove, the one he'd worn throughout the entire Bad tour, and placed it in Robert's hands. "This is yours now," Michael said. So you never forget that you were seen tonight. So you never forget your worth. But here's the part that will restore your faith in humanity. After the show, Michael didn't just send Robert back into the night. He made calls. By midnight, Robert had a bed in a rehabilitation facility that Michael personally paid for. By the end of the month, Robert was clean for the first time in 15 years. By the following spring, Michael had helped Robert reconnect with his daughter, fly her to Los Angeles for a reunion that both of them thought would never happen. But the story doesn't end there. 3 years later, in 1991, Robert Sullivan opened the first Second Chance Music Academy in Harlem, a free music school for homeless and at-risk youth, funded by a foundation Michael had quietly established. The school's mission was simple: see the invisible, hear the unheard, and give instruments to those who'd been told they didn't matter. In the lobby of that school, there's a glass case. Inside it sits a duct-taped 1952 Selmer saxophone and a single sequin glove. Beneath them, a plaque reads, November 15th, 1988. The night someone stopped to listen. Robert ran that academy until his death in 2019 at age 84. In those 28 years, the program served over 5,000 young people. 47 of them went on to professional music careers. Hundreds more found purpose, community, and the experience of being truly seen. But what most people don't know is that every November 15th, Michael would call Robert. No matter where he was in the world, no matter how busy his schedule, he called. They'd talk about music, about life, about the responsibility that comes with being heard when so many aren't. In 2009, when Michael died, Robert was devastated. But at the memorial, he did something extraordinary. He played Human Nature one more time on that same duct-taped saxophone with fingers that were 84 years old but still remembered every note. And in the audience, 47 musicians who'd graduated from Second Chance Music Academy stood and played with him. The ripple effect of that one moment, of Michael choosing to stop to see, to listen, had created a wave that would outlive them both. Today, there are 12 Second Chance Music Academies across the United States. They've served over 20,000 young people. The model has been replicated in 6 other countries. And it all started because one man chose to see another man that everyone else had walked past. Marcus Chun, the security guard who witnessed that first moment, later said, "I've worked hundreds of concerts. I've seen every major artist you can name. But I never saw anything like what Michael did that night. He didn't just perform for 20,000 people. He performed an act of recognition that's still performing itself decades later." Robert's daughter, Sarah, now runs the flagship academy in Harlem. In an interview last year, she said, "My father always told me that Michael gave him back his life that night. But Michael would say the opposite, that my father reminded him why he had a life worth living." They saved each other. And in saving each other, they created a model for how we're supposed to move through the world. The sequin glove remains in that glass case, but once a year, on November 15th, they take it out. A student who's overcome homelessness, addiction, or abuse gets to hold it for 1 minute. They're told the story of Robert and Michael. They're reminded that their circumstances don't define their worth. They're told that someone sees them, and then they're asked, "Who will you see?" This is what Michael Jackson understood that most of us forget. Real heroism isn't in the spotlight. It's in the choice to stop when everyone else keeps walking. It's in the recognition that the person bleeding on the sidewalk might be playing your song better than you ever could. It's an understanding that fame and platform aren't rewards, they're responsibilities. Michael had every reason to walk past Robert that night. He was tired. He had a show to prepare for. He had 20,000 people waiting for him. But he stopped. He listened. He saw. And in that moment of recognition, he didn't just change one life. He created a philosophy of visibility that's still changing lives today. If this story moved you the way it moved me, I need you to do something right now. Don't just watch and scroll away. Think about who you walked past this week. Who did you look through instead of at? Who's playing their heart out on a street corner, in a cubicle, in a classroom, in your own family, and you haven't stopped to really listen? Write their name in the comments below. Share this video with one person who needs to know their circumstances don't define their worth. Subscribe for more true stories where we explore what it means to use privilege, platform, and power to elevate others. Hit that notification bell because these stories of radical recognition are exactly what our world needs right now. And here's your mission this week. Stop for someone. Actually stop. Listen to their story. See them the way Michael saw Robert. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be public. It just has to be real. Then come back and tell me what happened. Who will you stop for? Who will you see? Tell me in the comments. Because the world doesn't need more people walking past each other. It needs more people who remember that everyone is playing a song worth hearing. You just have to stop long enough to listen.